Officer James, is your neck okay? Ms. Lee, who was walking next to him, asked. The two had chatted for some time before coming to the strawberry shed and had already made introductions. She asked, "By the way, is there a washroom here?" "I'll take you there. Don't run off by yourself." Carter notified the warden and brought the lady to the washroom next to the strawberry shed. There weren't female washrooms in the male prison. When the occasional female came to prison for work or other reasons and needed to use the washroom, they would clear out a whole washroom for their use. Carter needed to check that no one was inside, especially if they were inmates. "Is there anyone inside?" Carter called out from the door. But before he received any reply, he first sniffed the barely perceptible scent of smoke. Some inmates would come here to smoke under the pretext of going to the washroom. As the washroom was right next to the shed, the prison guards wouldn't specially follow them over, which was why they wouldn't usually be caught. "Who is smoking inside?" Carter's voice turned several degrees colder. He strode over and checked each cubicle. When he was midway through them, a flushing sound came from the innermost cubicle. He briskly walked over, knocking on the door. "Come out." A short while later, the cubicle door opened from the inside. Old Nine was sitting on the toilet as if up to nothing, a long-time-no-see look on his face. "Officer James, did you come to use the washroom?" If Carter wasn't mistaken, Old Nine should have been assigned to the paint factory not far away. As he still had a brace on his right hand, the factory shouldn't have given him heavy work to do, and he was relatively idle. "Get out." Carter didn't have the time nor patience to take up Old Nine smoking with him. After all, Ms. Lee was still waiting outside, but it was apparent that Old Nine had misunderstood what Carter was after. He remained seated on the toilet without budging, saying, "Did you see me smoking with your own eyes? What, I can't even shit in peace now?" It was difficult to dole out punishment without catching someone in the act of smoking. Old Nine must know this too, which was why he was sure that Carter couldn't do anything to him. But Carter had never intended to take it up with him in the first place. He impatiently said, "I don't care that you're smoking, just get out first." "Don't care?" Old Nine was caught off guard. He was visibly mystified. "Then what do I have to get out for?" Although asking this, he still pulled up his pants, walking out of the cubicle. "There are others who need to use the toilet. If you're done, hurry up and leave." Carter paused, afraid that Old Nine wouldn't cooperate. He added, "Don't force me to call the patrol team over." "Sheesh. What are you calling them over for?" Old Nine complained, then walked towards the door of the washroom. However, right after he walked out, he abruptly halted when he saw that a woman was standing by the door. He leaned over with considerable interest. "Hey, and this is?" "Stay away." Carter blocked Old Nine, turning his head over to say to Ms. Lee, "Go quickly." Frightened, Ms. Lee nodded and hurriedly entered the washroom. "Officer James." Old Nine didn't lean forward anymore, seeming to have just noticed the mark on Carter's neck. He jeered, "I'm jealous." Carter inclined his body away slightly before immediately realizing that this wouldn't be able to hide the mark on his neck. So he simply looked straight at Old Nine and said, "Hurry up and go back to your workstation." "That young miss just now was pretty," Old Nine yattered on. Carter frowned, saying coldly, "Don't get me to repeat myself." Old Nine seemed to have his mood spoiled, listlessly pursing his lips and turning away, about to leave. But right at this time, an unexpected situation arose. Aside from the dull rattling of air conditioning in this broad space, there was a little noise. Ms. Lee had likely gone into the cubicle nearest the washroom door, and the noise carried over from inside, breaking the stillness. The look in Old Nine's eyes immediately changed, his listless expression suddenly teeming with interest in the blink of an eye. He walked in the direction of the washroom, eyes blazing. "Officer James, I'm not done using the toilet yet." Men would often lose control of themselves to two vices, alcohol and lust. Carter got an ominous premonition. He put a hand on Old Nine's shoulder, saying sternly, "Back off right now." "Back off? Where to?" Old Nine licked his chops. "This is our prison washroom. Why should I let others use it?" "I'm warning you. Carter raised his voice, the rebuke more forceful than before. "There are visitors today. If you don't want time in the confinement cell, you'd better not mess around." "Mess around? Can looking at a woman even count as that?" Old Nine snorted. "Is prison a place for women to visit? Since she's come, you can't blame me for looking." It was then that Ms. Lee cautiously walked out. She should have heard them arguing and kept close to the wall in fear, unsure of what to do. "Don't be afraid." Carter turned his head and said to Ms. Lee, "Go back to the shed. I'll keep an eye on him." The strawberry shed was only 20 or so meters away. It wouldn't take more than a few moments to jog over. Ms. Lee nodded and immediately ran off. At the same time, Old Nine could no longer hold himself back, lurching forward suddenly. However, Carter didn't let Old Nine advance a step. He caught hold of Old Nine's uninjured arm, unceremoniously pulling him into a shoulder throw. Old Nine's back hit the ground with a thud and he cursed, making to get up and get even, but Carter never gave him the chance. He pressed him down to the ground with his knee, rolled him over, and took out a pair of silver handcuffs from the small pouch hanging next to his waist. That pouch carried handcuffs, a torch, rope, and other items. In the past, Carter had simply used the baton to knock them down and had never used the handcuffs, but the circumstances were special today. Since Old Nine was restrained before he could act out, naturally then it wouldn't be appropriate for Carter to use the baton. Even so, Carter didn't pay heed to Old Nine's hand injury, locking both hands together. "Fuck, your daddy's wrist is still broken." "You can have my apologies." Carter caught Old Nine's arm, pulling him up from the ground. As Old Nine's wrist sported an injury, he didn't dare to struggle after being cuffed, behaving himself somewhat. Carter informed the foreman of the paint factory to come over and retrieve his guy through the walkie-talkie. But when he put it down, he discovered that several people have crowded around the entrance of the strawberry shed not far off. Among the visitors who were watching the fuss, Melvin was looking straight at him. "You're just a librarian. Do you think you're all that fucking great? If I weren't injured, I can off you in a second." Old Nine cursed and glared at Carter, direly itching to screw him over. But as he went on and on, his voice suddenly wilted, and he even backpedaled a little. Carter was a bit confused at first, but when he followed Old Nine's gaze and looked over, he immediately understood why. Melvin was walking over impassively, flexing his wrist with his fingers crossed, in the cliched manner of getting ready to beat someone up. "Damn it, what the hell are you looking at me for? What's it to do with you?" Old Nine should have realized that his actions appeared a bit wimpy and forcibly put on airs, walking up to Melvin with his chest puffed. Melvin seized Old Nine's collar, asking in a deep voice, "Why, do you want to lose your other hand too?" Old Nine talked back, "Go at it if you fucking have the guts." Carter couldn't understand why Melvin insisted on joining the fray. He strode over and blocked Melvin, saying to him in a low voice, "Don't involve yourself, go plant your strawberries." Melvin glanced at Carter's neck and said with a straight face, "I'm done planting my strawberries." Under normal circumstances, when Comrade Melvin, an inmate assigned to the strawberry shed, said that he was done planting strawberries, it shouldn't evoke the imagination. But combine it with the look in his eyes and the mark on Carter's neck, this matter instantly became less innocent. Old Nine whistled. He was in front of them and could naturally hear the implicit meaning in Melvin's words. "I knew it. Where do you do it? The recreation room?" This was giving Carter a headache. He shouldn't have mocked Melvin for not knowing how to plant strawberries just now. Old Nine was sure to spread the word. At this time, the paint factory foreman came over. Carter held Old Nine's arm and escorted him over, saying irately, "Hurry up and get lost." "Sure, I'll remember this, Officer James." Old Nine lifted his chin, looking menacingly at Carter. "Just you wait." Carter was never cowed by intimidation from any inmate and didn't take this seriously at all. But Melvin came over to ask, "Do you want me to help?" Carter was baffled. "How can you help?" Melvin said, "I can cover you as well." Amazing. This guy really took himself as a kingpin already, playing the big bad boss in the underbelly of prison. I'd say, Melvin. Carter jabbed Melvin's chest. Can't you at least have the sense to realize that you're now sitting in prison? Melvin lowered his gaze, looking at the finger that Carter jabbed his chest with, then shot a question that came out of nowhere. Will you be getting your handcuffs back? I can just go get another set, Carter unconsciously replied before finding that there was something wrong with the question. What are you asking this for? It's nothing, Melvin brushed over, just in case. There was still a day to the weekend. Carter took a rare day off. He planned to wait for the hickey on his neck to fade away before going back to work. But news of Old Nine having a score to settle with him even spread to the admin officers. When others saw that he wanted to take a day off, they assumed that he was hiding from Old Nine. Naturally, Carter couldn't care less about Old Nine, but he still gave a perfunctory excuse and took the leave. But on Monday morning after the break, Carter stared expressionlessly at his reflection in the mirror. There was still a pale pink mark on his neck. Carter hadn't thought of Melvin much during these 3 rest days, but now, at the sight of his neck, he involuntarily felt irritable again. He didn't want to guess how many versions the story of his and Melvin's relationship would have morphed into by now. Fortunately, Carter had made the necessary preparations. He took out the powder foundation he had bought from a cosmetic store over the weekend and clumsily smeared some on his neck. Once it was on, Carter discovered a problem. The store assistant said that this was the fairest shade available, which would match his skin tone. However, Carter didn't have the nerve to try it, simply purchasing it and rushing off. But now that he was putting it on, he then discovered that his neck was still a shade fairer. Was it possible that he wasn't applying it correctly? Carter had never used this stuff before and didn't know how it was meant to work. He tried adding some lotion, but it still didn't look right. On a whim, he suddenly thought of adding some toothpaste, but it ended up looking even weirder than before. Haphazardly, he spread it around a bit more and gave up, heading out like this. Neither old Wang in the mailroom nor his colleagues when in the locker room noticed anything off with Carter's neck. However, his cover-up still didn't escape the eyes of a certain culprit. Look at the screen. Carter frowned, knocking the table surface with a knuckle, calling the attention of Melvin, who had his eyes steadfastly fixed on him. Aren't you afraid that I'll read nonsense? It's not as if I can tell if you do. Melvin's chin was resting on a hand and his elbow propped up on the table. His eyes never wavered from Carter's neck. Officer James, your neck is dirty. It's not dirty. Carter didn't want to talk about this, going back to read off the screen. This week, electronics manufacturing. Before he could finish reading the news, Melvin suddenly reached out, wrapping a hand around Carter's nape, and with his thumb rubbed off the powder foundation on Carter's neck. Carter had never experienced this before, nor could he describe what this feeling was. But this action of Melvin's was like those people who curiously asked you if your eyebrows were drawn or tattooed, only to reach out to wipe it natural as can be, ridding a good chunk of the eyebrows you spent half a day meticulously drawing on with eyeliner. It still looks more natural like this, Melvin nodded. Carter inhaled deeply. Curiously enough, he had actually spent sufficient time in Melvin's company to get used to such behavior. He inwardly reassured himself that it wasn't healthy to keep getting angry anyway, and he pushed Melvin's arm away with apathy on his face. Don't interrupt my reading. Melvin kept staring at Carter, as if trying to get his fill for the 3 lost days. Carter finally was unable to keep his temper in check, letting go of the mouse. He leaned back into his seat and said, "Are you even listening?" "I'm listening," Melvin said. "Just try me if you don't believe me." Carter arched a brow. "And if you don't get it right?" "You can punish me." When he heard that word, images of him cuffing Melvin to the chair suddenly surfaced in his mind's eye. If he really had the opportunity to cuff Melvin, then he must use a little leather whip and— Wait. His thoughts were drifting again. Carter hurriedly pulled his thoughts back, his throat rolled and he affected nonchalance. "What is the offshore exchange rate of Chinese yuan today?" Melvin reported a string of digits. In all honesty, Carter had already tossed the information out of his head the moment he read it. He posed another question. "Then which industry is showing major changes today?" Melvin said, "Manufacturing." "Got it. There was nothing to punish him for. Carter crossed his arms in front of his chest and asked, "How on earth do you multitask?" Melvin said, "It's just like drawing a circle with your left hand and a square with your right. You just have to go along with the flow of it." The corners of Carter's lips twitched in speechlessness. Was this something that could be done just by going along with the flow? However, he suddenly thought of something. He was still holding on to Melvin's little secret. Why did he have to contend with this guy in a show of strength? By the way, Carter felt a spark of mischief. He unhurriedly moved his mouth to speak. "I was working hard at studying stock trading at home the past few days and made a friend on the forum." "Friend?" asked Melvin. "Yeah, he's called Go. He appears to be very well respected in the community." Carter paused here. "We chatted for a long time. He advised me to pay more attention to undervalued stocks so I can buy them at low prices." Carter followed up with quite a number of professional terms. It wasn't that he had deliberately prepped for this, only that after hanging out with this great god of stock trading for this length of time, he inevitably accumulated a certain threshold of financial knowledge. As such, he was able to speak with confidence, pulling off the bluff. "Go." Carter saw bewilderment cross Melvin's face for the first time. "The online friend you made is called Go?" "Yeah, do you know him?" Carter said. "I went through the forum. He sounded very professional in his posts, so I private messaged him and he quickly got back to me." After saying this, Carter seriously wanted to award himself an Oscar. He never knew that he had such stellar acting skills, not feeling the slightest prick of guilt when pulling a fast one, almost convincing himself with his performance. "Go replied you?" Melvin's face grew even more bewildered, only that he was still striving to keep a straight face. The evil little minion in Carter's heart was already rolling on the ground in laughter, but he still spoke in a conversational tone. "He's quite a nice guy. He always answers any questions I have." "Are you certain that the person you're talking to is Go?" Melvin asked. Carter mentally supplemented the rest of Melvin's words. "Are you certain that you aren't talking to an account thief? Otherwise, the avatar is his." Carter speedily grabbed the little tail that Melvin exposed and said, "From the way you're asking, it seems that you do come onto this forum." "I do." Melvin was obviously unused to being forced to reveal what he wanted to hide. The radiance hanging off his lips curved a little unnaturally. "What's your username?" Carter blinked owlishly. "We can add each other as friends." Melvin didn't answer. His lips pursed, and he only spoke after a long silence. "I'm sitting in prison now. There's no point in adding friends." At this, the evil little minion in Carter's heart laughed his teeth out. "Who's better between the god of Go and you? I think that it isn't a bad idea for me to learn stock trading from him." "Why do you need to learn from someone else when you have me?" Melvin's brows furrowed. "And who knows what the hell is up with this Go guy?" Seeing that Melvin was almost driven schizophrenic, Carter immediately felt gratified. He felt that he had reclaimed all the ground he lost from being teased to near insanity, and got even for the irritability that rose from the strawberry planting. Melvin was visibly vexed, frowning as he said, "Don't talk to him any more." Carter leisurely said, "Why not?" "Because." Melvin paused, obviously fabricating an excuse. "At your current knowledge level, you can't determine the ability of the other party yet." It even sounded extremely plausible. Carter lazily went, "Huh. Then how can I trust your abilities?" It was unprecedented. Carter had succeeded in making Melvin go mute. Carter couldn't resist any longer. The corners of his lips hooked up as he said, "You're acting a bit weird today, Melvin." When saying this, Carter even carried the mentality of a proud battle commander who had everything in the palm of his hand. After all, he had been oppressed too many times by the logic freak Melvin. It was rare for him to win a round. But perhaps his mannerism deviated too much from the norm. Melvin cautiously drew back the vexation on his face, as if he had only just realized that there was something strange about this conversation from the very beginning. He asked, "Why did you seek Go out?" "Can't I?" Carter knew that Melvin had begun his counterattack, but he already had a seamless excuse waiting on the tip of his tongue. He's very famous on the forum. There are probably many who want to learn from him. Why don't you open the forum now? With his chin in his hand, Melvin pointed to the computer display monitor. Let me see what you've been talking about. The fierce assault that came out of the blue caused Carter's expression to momentarily stiffen. 3 words flashed through his mind. I slipped up. Why hadn't he considered that Melvin could verify the authenticity of his lie on the spot? If there's nothing wrong with the points he's making, Melvin went on, then you can continue to learn from him. Why do I have to show you our private conversation? Carter grasped at straws. It contains my confession to the god of Go. Confession? Melvin lifted his brows, narrowing his eyes slightly. What did you confess? Share it with me? How would that do? Carter said. It's none of your business. I'm afraid that you'll get scammed, Melvin said, and heedlessly took the mouse over, opening the forum's login page. Log into your account. I want to see what you've been talking about. Melvin didn't seem to want to give Carter any chance for refusal, dead set on seeing Carter's baseless confession. I'm not logging in. Cornered, Carter's brows bunched in worry. Use your account if you want. Why must I be the one to reveal my online handle? Melvin's fingers on the mouse lifted minutely. It wasn't difficult to tell that he was fighting the impulse to log into his own account, but he swiftly set his fingers down. He gave Carter a measuring look. Forget it. Carter inwardly let loose a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had guessed right. Melvin wasn't willing to voluntarily divulge the pseudonym he used on the forum.